Welcome back to the 2 Months Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall. We are presented by BioStill and powered by Go Goat Sports. We have two very special guests with us. You can find them on Sportsnet throughout the season. They're the in-game analysts. So we'd like to first welcome Mike Futa back to the 2 Months Podcast. Foods, how's it going?
Very well, Josh. Thanks for having me back.
You're very, very welcome. And this is our first time having our next guest on, and he's got his own podcast. He's got 7 episodes in. He just had Andrew Mangiapane on. We have Luke Gazdic on. Luke, how's it going?
Good, buddy. Thanks for having me.
No, no
Just
worries.
so you know, Josh, the last time Luke and I were on together, Caroline Cameron was host, so you got a lot to live up to today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm nowhere near that situation there for sure. She is one of the best in the game for sure. But we'll first throw it to Luke. You're doing podcasts now. You're kind of obviously more into the media side, but how's these 7 episodes been for you with the podcast, and how are you enjoying it so far, connecting with some of the teammates that you've had, and just kind of sharing some good stories about playing with these guys and then their road further in the NHL.
Yeah, it's been a fun project so far. I had a pretty down summer where I really didn't have much going on. I was making some short form content, smaller pieces, and kind of had the idea of wanting to always do a long form conversation show, talking hockey and life and the journey and the grind. I really got inspired by, honestly, guys in basketball, JJ Redick and Paul George, these guys that are even still playing in the league, that are having current players on and talking about the state of the game and all that. I thought that was fascinating. So I started with one episode, a demo with Connor Brown before he had signed anywhere, and it kind of just took off. And it's been really fun having guys in. Honestly, most of them have been former teammates. Not all, but we've had just the guys in here in Toronto in the summer. It's just a plethora of NHL talent guys are here training. So just asked for a couple favors. Hey, come up and have a chat with me. And yeah, it's been great so far here, getting to talk to the guys and feel like I'm almost in a locker room again.
Yeah, no, that's usually how it feels. Like I didn't play at the level you played at, and Foods was managing at, but you just like wreck hockey for us here in Edmonton, and but it is kind of when you get these conversations going, it is pretty cool. It is like locker room talk and whatnot, and it's Mitts Off with Luke Gazdic. That's the name of the podcast for people that want to find it. You can find it on all your podcast service platforms. So get a hold of that, and we'll put it in our show notes too to tag it. But Foods, how about you? Have you caught any of these good interviews and kind of just watching what Gaz is up to lately?
I've listened to some on the pause. I haven't watched. I for whatever reason, I get on a treadmill. I don't watch the actual. It's like Kipper and Bourne. I listen to it. I don't actually see them in action. But the one thing I will say about Luke, and I referred to him as the Sportsnet on air rookie of the year at my last show, and he wasn't even on, so it wasn't something I was looking for his approval on. But part about Luke, which is really interesting for me, is when you get into these situations, it's how much preparation goes into it. And everybody, I mean, I never was a teammate or was responsible for Luke in any capacity when he was a player, but you hear certain things about a player and what a greir teammate he was. Now, obviously, everybody knows how tough he was, and usually players that have that ability to protect teammates and are great teammates, they're lifelong friends because they were protectors. But his preparation work and that he goes on to it is excellent. And it's different because you're sitting there and you can have all your little prep and your preparation, but once they say go, you're not wheeling it back. It's live television, and it's not like, I love doing these things, but if you say something there, you can't wheel it back. It's your 30 minutes of national television, and they make you feel very comfortable. The hosts there are incredible, but Luke is the way he's grown and built his brand up. It's just awesome to see. And having seen the way he was as a player, he took no shortcuts, so it doesn't surprise me that he's doing what he's doing now. So kudos to him. I know he's got a big year ahead with Sportsnet, but I think part of makes it so easy for me to be on with someone like Luke is what you just said. And in talking to yourself, Mutts and Mitts here, you guys got your 2 podcasts, but you've got literally, it makes it, you do feel like you're in a dressing room, you're having a conversation. It's not forced. It doesn't feel like it's scripted. It doesn't feel like, you've got to pause or ask to filter your question, because there's so many stories you can tell. And that's one thing that I do notice about hockey players, that they're very genuine in their ability to tell a story. And it is truly fun to watch. And a lot of the stories, I mean, other than Sherry Basson, who, as Gaz knows, likes to tell the same story over and over again, and he forgets who he's telling it to.
That's Basson for you, yeah.
Although he is one special human being, I saw him a couple of weeks ago. The ability for hockey players to share stories is truly magical.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. Gaz, one of the great things we like to do on our pod is kind of talk about like the mentorship part. Who was kind of a mentor for you growing up in your hockey career, but also transitioning from playing to the media side of it? Was there someone, obviously your family is always going to be very supportive in that, but is there someone, throughout the game growing up, and then, when you transition over to the media side, is there someone that kind of helped you out through that process, or was it all kind of natural with the media side too?
I leaned on my coworkers a lot, to be honest. Gene Principe, who I originally worked with, I would say Gene should take a lot of credit for the work I'm doing now, because the first 2 to 4 games, I don't know, you could go back and look at some of that tape. I still have it on my computer. It looks much different than probably I am now. And Gene just made the process so easy for me when I came in there. Like, I didn't realize how good the hosts were, especially Gene, at their jobs in terms of making the show flow and knowing when I had to talk more, talk less, or what to talk about. He really was the guy for me early. And then honestly, first of all, thanks Futs for the kind words, but guys like Futs and Borny and Sam Cosentino and David Amber, I'm always picking these guys' brains. And even when I'd be in studio and Elliot's there and Kev Biex is there, I'm always asking questions. It was just like when I was playing. I'm always trying to learn more. And, if you get in this situation, what should you do, and this and that. And I should also shout out a man named Bob Babinski, who the broadcasting coach, works with some Sportsnet personalities behind the scenes. And Bob's an incredible guy. We would kind of break down some of my film once a month, something like that, where he would watch me watch my Hockey Centrals and my analysis, and we would kind of break some things down and go over it just like we would hockey tape. So I would say most of the Sportsnet environment has been extremely welcoming, and production staff on top of that has been awesome.
Gene's a beauty. I had a good 45-minute conversation with him yesterday over the phone. We just such a great guy to bounce advice off of and get good conversations with. So he's been on with us once before.
Did he have his shirt on?
Yeah, he had a shirt on. I couldn't believe.
Love those marathon pictures. That was awesome.
Yeah, he is a beauty in every which way, and everyone knows that. So yeah, he came out last year. We had a hockey tournament, and we raised some money for the Ben Stelter Fund, and Gene came out and dropped the puck for the opening face-off, and there's 4 different Oilers teams playing, and we were able to kind of do that, and it was kind of nice to have him there. But we'll transition over to kind of some hockey stuff here. So there's some news coming out of Calgary today. Lindholm is very open to resigning, and Noah Hannafin has just said that he's kind of rescinding what he was saying earlier, that he would be open to staying in Calgary. I'll throw to you, Luke, first, the kind of those thoughts with the, maybe Lindholm and Hannafin, a pillar on the back end and a pillar up front. How important would it be for those guys to kind of stay in Calgary if they do resign?
Well, I think this is a larger conversation. Mike, you and me might have talked about this a bit last year. I'm not sure what's happening with the culture in Calgary. To me, Calgary used to be one of the coolest spots, I thought, to go play. It has, it's the Dome, it's near the mountains, it's a great city filled with great people. And almost ever since Johnny and Chuck left, it's like this exodus of players not wanting to play in this city anymore and not wanting to sign there because, the taxes and the rink's old and the weather's cold. But it's something with the culture there, with these guys not wanting to sign long-term deals. And truly, I just don't understand it. This is a great NHL spot to play. And to have guys like that, all 3 of them kind of to anything, I think says a lot. And those are 3 really important players for them that are going to be pieces down. I mean, if you lose Elias Lindholm, what made Jonathan Huberdeau sitting there on the first line left wing, and I don't know who's going to be passing him the puck. Yeah. And I don't know what's happened here the last couple of years in terms of guys not wanting to play for the Flames or, being skittish there. But I played for Ryan Huska in the minors in Stockton, and he's a great guy, great coach, great person, and mentor. And I hope those guys jump on board and kind of bring the ship back around up in Calgary.
Yeah. Feuds, your thoughts, kind of what's going on in Calgary, maybe if these guys resign as they speak to the media today.
Just it's just a strange one because it was, you know, you got Daryl Sutter, who's the coach of the year, and you know, they lose Goudreau, they lose Tkachuk, and all these new guys come in, and Daryl, for me, who, and I obviously love Daryl, being part of 2 Stanley Cups with him, but it was just crazy. I mean, they seemed to have an off year, and there seemed to be some kind of, as hard as the team come out of the gate, it was one of those underwhelming seasons performance wise for so many different guys. And we were always seem to be talking about things away from the rink and press conferences, et cetera, instead of the on ice product. And they just couldn't seem to get there. They almost remind me of the Blue Jays. You're expecting something, and every time you start to feel good, they just let you down a little bit. And that team couldn't find its traction for whatever the reason. With adding Huberdeau and Naz and Uyghur, you'd think, you know, that Brad Treliving had worked really once again, filled a bunch of holes, but they couldn't find that chemistry. Always seemed to be internal strife. They kind of look like they pin everything on Daryl because of all these exit meetings. Guys just aren't going to return if Daryl's not back. So, I mean, Tree kind of gets ahead of the game and leaves. I'm sure if I don't know for a fact, but I think if Tree probably would have remained if there was a coaching change done, and it was being hard for them to work together. I know how much they respect one another, but all that controversy, and it's like they get Daryl and put all the pin on them, and then they still find out that all these guys still want to test the market. So what I think's probably happened is a couple of those guys have gone out and quietly, they've got great agents, found out what's out there, and there's probably not the money that they think is out there that they're expecting. And a team like Calgary's probably, because the guys aren't overly happy, they can't blame Daryl anymore. They've got a new coach. I've heard great things about Huska. You know, there were supposed to be all these mass changes with their management and their scouting department, and which really resulted in Craig Conroy being promoted, well-deserved, you know, Don Maloney. So there was really no changes. They just shuffled the decks around on the boat. So there's going to be a lot of pressure to succeed under that. And now these guys have a decision to come back. I mean, they've got to learn under Ryan Huska. Do they feel much more comfortable? It's going to be a completely atmosphere than Daryl. But these guys have put themselves in a place that there's no more excuses. The light's shining clearly on them. If they were going to blame Daryl, which I completely, as much as I disagree with some of the Daryl stuff this year, I just think that's a load of crap to pin it on him. There's got to be more accountability. So now they're all going to have to be held accountable. There's a lot of great hockey players there that underachieved. And I think that Calgary's probably going to have to overpay some of these guys that should be, just as Luke said, should be dying to remain Calgary Flames. They're going to have to, sometimes you have to overpay a free agent to come in who hasn't experienced the culture, but they're going to have to overpay guys that have been there and should be dying to stay Calgary Flames just to keep them around.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a good organization, and they've been very helpful to us and getting a lot of their players on our podcast, and, you know, and Backlund and Luch and Toffoli and Lewis, and, you know, we just had Matthew Phillips on, but he did sign with Washington. But they've been a really great organization to kind of deal with. But it'll be interesting to watch for sure. You know, like Luke, you're part of that organization. You've seen kind of how it is, and you've seen the head coach, and obviously, you know, you've been involved in the game a long time. I want to move over to another organization that you played with, Luke, and that's the New Jersey Devils. A lot of more people are talking about them now. You know, you were there with a lot of those younger kids that are now blossoming into the roles that they are now. You know, how exciting will it be to kind of watch this team, and, you know, what kind of expectations do you think should be set for this organization and this team this year?
Yeah, I like what Fitzy's done over there and what he's building. I think that they are going to be a tough team to play against, first and foremost. When you hear media and players talking about being hard to play against, that's going to be a hard team to play against. I love the addition of Toffoli. I know that's Futa's guy as well. I think slotting him in there with Hughes or wherever he comes in, he's going to be scoring a lot of goals next year. I think the Devils finished higher than the Rangers next year. Honestly, I think it's their year to kind of jump on top of that, and they're going to have a good chance to do some damage. I think they still are a couple years away, but man, they're fun to watch. They're tough to play against, and the Rock over there in Newark's going to be buzzing this year because I think they got a pretty good team. I don't know if they're going to be going all the way out of the East this year, but I think they're going to contend and do some damage.
Yeah, they'll be a fun team to kind of watch, and I think Toffoli will be a great add. And, they've done such a great job with drafting and developing too. So I think it'll be good there. Feud stuff. See, Toph goes there. It's like your son that you never had. So talk about him and the chemistry that he probably can have with that organization and some of those players there.
Well, you started to see. I mean, I think I've always looked at Ty in a bad year, he should score 30 goals, right? In a down year. And I think that's something that adding that mix to New Jersey with all their creativity and the amount of different pieces, there's not a lot of, they're outstanding pieces, but they're all different in different ways, the way what they bring to the table, the skill set. So I think they're going to be a really tough team. I'm amazed at how important to me I think the start of this season is, because there's always certain teams that we think they're ready to push the envelope, right? This is like they're getting closer to that. They're exciting to watch, but then something happens and they fall back and they're back in the lottery situation. And I think a team like New Jersey last year, I mean, they started out, they were booing Lindy Ruff out of the building. By the end of it, they're in love with them. I think this is going to be a positive. That's going to be a tough team to play against. I think the Buffalo Sabres are starting already to push over the limit and become a lot more competitive on a nightly basis. I think the Ottawa Senators, if getting the people back, there's some teams in the East that are always just earmarked to be below that equator and be the easy outs in the playoffs that are really going to be interesting watches for me this year. And then you're going to have to start to wonder, are the Bostons of the world, who always find a way to be there. And I mean, Tampa always finds a way to be there. The Leafs have done incredible things up front to get better. So I think the East is going to be fun to watch this year. And then you've got Pittsburgh adding Carlson. There's going to be some, it's like, I guess they said in baseball play, there's going to be some, like, where's Washington now, where they've got Ovi chasing a record, but are they on the lower half of the team? And I mean, of the tier, and it's going to be some exciting hockey all the way down on the East. It is in the West. There's something about this East because it's kind of been, Boston, Tampa, Toronto, obviously last year, Florida pulled it all together at the right time. But there's a time, I don't think it's going to be a total changing the guard, but the guard get their ass in gear. They're going to have some real quality teams nipping at their heels to make it really interesting.
Yeah. Luke, kind of your thoughts. Great thoughts there, Foods. That's great to see kind of how the shape of the Eastern Conference is going to make out. But Luke, I've kind of wanted to figure out your kind of thoughts here on like all of these tough guys, a role that you did so well in your career. You got Luch and Reeves and there's Arbor, Jack Guy. There's so many of greats that have moved into that Atlantic division. And, is it going to be kind of interesting to see kind of how that kind of shapes out for, the toughness in the game, and that I think it's still great that it's still there. I know, when we watch junior hockey, I was at a WHL game and the other day, and it seemed to be a little bit of lack in the physicality, the hitting and the toughness there. And I hate seeing it because that's a part of the game that I love the most. But all these great guys kind of going over to the other side here. There's so much of that out west, and there still is. But now all the bigger heavyweights are going out east. Your kind of thoughts and kind of how that's going to shape up out there.
Well, Ryan Reeves better get in shape. He better be in shape this summer coming into camp, because I'll tell you, I left Edmonton and went to New Jersey. I went from the west to the east, and that was a wake-up call for me. It was a different system. It was a different game, playing for John Hines. Everything was north-south. It was so fast. I couldn't believe how fast we were breaking out of the zone and transitioning, as opposed to coming from Edmonton, where everything was low and slow and up as a unit and heavy and coming in waves, where it was just a track meet when I got to the East. And we're playing these games. We're playing the Rangers and the Caps and the Hurricanes, who are fast as ever. It's kind of it's almost like a different league. And I was definitely caught off guard, but all these guys can skate and play now. Even the guys that are so tough. Revo's a good skater. That's why he's always been able to play. But Jack Guy and Tommy Wilson and Trent Frederick and these guys that'll fight, they're playing on the lines, but they produce as well. And I think that's the biggest difference from my era. My era tough guy was, you could get away with having 4 or 5 points a year as long as you were doing your role and doing your job. But if you go 20 games without scoring a goal now and you're on the fourth line, like, they'll bring in somebody else. They'll bring in somebody younger, smaller, or faster, because you also have to produce. Most coaches want the ability to play your fourth line versus any other team's first line now, which wasn't really the case. I'll never forget getting Sidney Crosby sent out, and coach called me off as fast as I could get off. But the game certainly has changed, but all these guys that are playing now that scrap are still producing heavily, and if they don't, they're not there anymore.
Yeah. And do you think the game changes in a way where, the toughness kind of, like obviously for Toronto's instance, like that, they haven't really had that for a while. Back in the day, that was the Domies, and Brian McCabe could obviously fight a little bit, but you had Tucker and them. But do you think the game, the speed of that, or the change of complexion that Tree Living has had in Toronto, will be a recipe of success for the Leafs to kind of maybe get over the hump? Or is it, just more of an internal thing that they got to get over the hump with some of their star players, and just adding toughness doesn't just mean everything else is going to go great? Luke, kind of your thoughts on
Well,
that.
I don't know if it's going to bring them over the hump, but adding toughness certainly can't hurt. And I think that adding a guy like Ryan Reeves in your lineup, even Bertuzzi, who's a little scrappy, it makes everybody tougher. When Revo's in the lineup, it makes everybody feel a little bigger, and you'll see scrums in front of the net. Instead of just one guy going after it, you're going to see kind of everybody kind of jump on board. And I think having a guy like that, in your lineup can really change things. It, gives everyone a couple inches. The guys that are playing and on the ice will have a little more room out there. I'll tell you what, defensemen are going to think twice about taking a run at a top line winger or a top line center if Revo is skating around patrolling the offensive zone. And I don't know if the toughness part brings them over the hump, but it can't hurt. It can't hurt.
I think it makes them healthier. I think it maintains your health throughout the year. I mean, I've always had that argument of the importance of that role. I mean, and then somebody will come back and say, "Oh, well, Colorado doesn't have it," and I'll say, "Have you not seen Curtis McDermott?" Like,
Curtis McDermott, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't play a playoff game, right? But there's the reason he's there is to make sure guys' health is preserved, so you're fresh going to the playoffs and people aren't taking advantage. And I love the Reeves edition. I love the Luch edition in Boston. The overall toughness of the certain teams that have that ability, and the two teams that really haven't had it. And I mean, obviously I love Wayne Simmons, but he wasn't being used, and he's not at that stage of his career where he should be fighting guys like Ryan Reeves and stuff like that in Toronto. But when you look at the team like Pittsburgh, who for years has just been the last few years, and that's what kind of surprised me. I mean, I talked a little bit with Ryan Burke and Ron Hextall, who are guys that obviously come from an era of toughness and truculence, etc. To have a team like that without any kind of physical presence, damn well Sidney Crosby wasn't enjoying it. So now you add another Erik Karlsson. I'm not sure, and you might know better, if they've got somebody that come up, and I know their head coach there was really against that role and in that position of toughness and using somebody towards that. But I'll tell you that I'm sure the players, I guarantee you that Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Nylander were thrilled when that signing happened. And if I was the Ottawa Senators, who DJ Smith, who was one of the tougher hombres going up, the style he played and the kind of team he wants, I'd be getting on the phone if I were Pierre Dorion to the Philadelphia Flyers, who clearly want to be 31st for the next couple of years based on what they're doing. And I'd find out what you want for Nick Delorier. And I would overpay for Nick Delorier, because Toronto and Ottawa is going to be a huge rivalry. All these teams are going to be a huge rivalry, and Ottawa doesn't have that element. And Nick Delorier is a glue in the dressing room. He's tough. He brings that element that'll offset. Not that he's going to, beat up Ryan Reeves, but it gives that. I mean, you had that role, Gazdic. Even Luch used to tell me, who's one of the best in the history at it, that when he came into Los Angeles and Curtis McDermott was playing, who Gads is one of the only guys that I've ever seen in the minors actually handle Curtis and do a good job of it. But he said, you think twice about going in and running around after guys if Curtis is playing that night, because not that you're terrified of the result, but you're going to have accountability if he's in the lineup. And once Curtis left, people didn't mind going in and running at Doughty and running at some of the skill guys down there. And that's why I think it's big. Even other with Toronto, I think the Max Domi thing and these guys being on 1-year deals, it brings another element. Like when Max is playing possessed and hungry, he doesn't let people screw around with his teammates either. And he's the guy that can play in your top two lines, and he holds people accountable. And I think the Leafs identity, I'm not really sure on the Klingberg edition, but that's for another day. But I just think the Leafs identity has now got so much more than just skill. And it's a team that's going to be, you got to think about how hard it's going to be to play them with their physical ability.
Yeah, that's You probably play obviously a bit tougher. I don't know, Luke, do you have anything to add to that before we move on to something else?
No, that was very well said. I think to kind of just tail off Mike, I think where they lack is their blue line, Toronto. I wish they were just a little bigger and tougher on their blue line. Like their defensive zone this year is going to be a treat to watch just because I don't love the Klingberg addition from what I heard from guys in Minnesota. And his game wasn't, really where it used to be back when he played for the Stars. And yeah, they brought in Jake McCabe, but I don't know, man. It was a suspect blue line at best last year, and they didn't really make any changes without, Gustafsson leaving and Klingberg coming in. So I wish they had a little more meat on their blue line. And I think that's going to be their downfall, if anything, to keep them from getting over the hump.
Yeah, I agree so much with Gaz. I felt that, and again, not knowing, I mean, Klingberg was obviously an incredibly skilled player, turned down money in Dallas, goes to the last place team in Anaheim. I really didn't like his defensive game, had holes galore. I'm not an analytics guy, but his defensive analytics are horrible. And then he goes to Anaheim and more holes on a bad team are exposed. And then at the trade deadline, when you should have this incredible asset, they're not even allowed to move him. So I love giving him a second chance. Obviously, this guy's going to bring some speed and skill to the power play, but $4 million a year is a lot to pay for a guy that you're not sure if you can play him against other teams' top lines. And I just personally felt, and I'm not in there, so I don't know, that the element that Luke Schenn was bringing on the blue line for a lot less money was something more of a necessity to the Toronto blue line, or a need. A little bit of right shot snot that had really filled out the kind of player he really identified what type of player he would be a little bit more valuable to the current crop than adding someone like Klingberg.
No, and that's very true. And I don't know. Like I thought Jake McCabe when he came in, I was expecting a little bit more out of him, and there were some defensive zone decisions that just kind of were questioned. I don't know if he just didn't fit in as it took him. I would say it probably takes the transition time when you just get traded and whatnot. But we'll move over to the Oilers. Luke, and kind of your thoughts. Obviously, you had that great interview with Connor Brown. It got a lot of traction, as you were saying too, and the addition of him to this roster is going to be amazing, I think, for them. And that kind of help, and the familiarity he has with Connor McDavid. In all reports, we just had Bob Stauffer on with us the other day, and he said that Jack Campbell looks completely different in the captain skates here and a lot more confidence and all that. But I think the biggest thing is obviously between the heads, but he's more or less said, body composition, he said, and Bob goes, who should it be? I shouldn't be a 50-some-year-old guy, 260 pounds, should be commenting on a professional athlete's body composition. But the fact that they're probably going to need him, so I think Skinner did a good job and maybe just a little bit overwhelmed in the playoffs, but they are kind of heavily favored here, Luke. And your thoughts with this team? You're an alumni, you're close with a lot of these guys here. Your thoughts on the Oilers coming up here?
Yeah, I'm obviously pretty heavily biased. I love to talk good about them, but for the first time in a long time, we can. Like this team is the real deal for me. Yeah. In terms of the way they're going to play and produce, and with Connor and Leon going every night, they can single-handedly beat teams themselves. Bringing in Connor Brown was the best, and I want to say under the radar addition, but it's not really under the radar. Everyone knows now the motivation he has to make up to $4 million in bonuses. Had great chemistry in junior with the Erie Otters with Connor. I wanted them to add another piece up front, maybe a veteran kind of like the Bukestad they brought in last year. And at camp, they have Sutter, Gagne, Adam Ern, these guys on PTOs. Hopefully someone takes one of those jobs and runs with it. It's going to come down to health and goaltending for the Oilers. I think if they can stay healthy and they get average to above average goaltending, they'll have a shot of going all the way. But it's the unpopular opinion that if they would have gotten maybe a couple more saves in the Vegas series, that could have been different. A couple additions here. It's must-watch TV every night with 97. Some of those nights in studio that I get to do their games, we call them late games for us because they're usually a couple hours after Hockey Central, but it's must-watch hockey. Watching Connor skate around and playing the game like nobody has ever before. So it's certainly going to be an exciting year for the Oil. And like I said, health and goaltending for them are their two biggest issues going into it.
Yeah. Feuds.
You see this guy. Sometimes podcast often. I got the guys working on the other side. This guy's got a full-blown headset on, blowing leaves into my window here, so I can't. I think that was a great answer, Gaz. But if you catch the guy in the back there, that's classic timing. I love the call. I love.
It's so funny. They're closing the pool. They're closing the pool here too, Mike. There's people all back here. I can't see it either.
Power washing the window, and it's like sounds like I'm going to get blown out of the seat here. But Connor Brown is one of those special type of guys, right? And you. This was I mean, I know the family really well. He's an Etobicoke kid. His dad's a Etobicoke Hall of Fame guy, great athlete. Just one of those families, great families. And I look at the care, like this is one of those throwback intangible players. And I called him just to see where he was at health-wise before he signed anywhere. And he said he feels better than ever. So I look at this being like we looked at when Hyman was added to the Oilers, and we were kind of like, what's he going to be like? This guy can play with anybody. They can play up and down your lineup with character. If he stays healthy, I think I agree. He's going to be one of the most underrated signings in the NHL this year. I just think he's a winner. He's a guy. It's the exact kind of piece that I always think every team needs, whether it was the Leafs. I know how much Ottawa missed him when he left Ottawa, but I think this is going to be one of those pieces that's just over the top. And again, when you get to Jack Campbell, obviously, you know my relationship with Jack. I love him to death. All I need to see from Jack is the first time he goes in and struggles, that he doesn't go up in his interview and say, "This is on me. I blew it for the team. That's the biggest thing, that where he takes on the whole load that he's let the team down and then goes out to the entire media and tells them it was all my fault. That works for me one time, and then you move on from it. You don't have to say it after every. He's so mentally hard on himself. You're not going to find a better teammate in the world, but he's got to get consistent. It's all between the ears with him. I don't care about his body composition. He's always been in incredible shape. It's between the ears and his mental toughness and his ability to put a bad goal behind him. Because when he's on, he's on. Like he's got all the capabilities, but he can't feel that pressure that, oh my God, I'm letting Connor McDavid down. He's just got to get it between the ears, and he's never going to be questioned as a teammate. But it's all about his mental preparation and how he deals with adversity.
Yeah. I think he's going to have a good year. Like I said this to Stoff in our last interview too, is like, I was a bit surprised that he didn't get at least one start in the playoffs. I don't know where you guys come out on that. I know, obviously as watching him with Toronto, they had the tough times getting over the hump. And he, when they got into the playoff series against Montreal, like especially the overtime wins, he never got. And I thought when he got that overtime win in Los Angeles, I thought that kind of did a lot for his confidence, and maybe there's a different outcome if he gets one of the starts against the Vegas series, but he doesn't. But I wonder if is there any which way, Luke, that can be a confidence booster for him going into this season, knowing that he kind of did finish. He didn't start the season great, but he kind of did finish the season in a better form than he did to start.
Well, I'm sure he's cleaned the slate and looking for a positive way to start this. Listen, he's a good kid. I played for 2, maybe 3 years in the minors with him in Texas when he was just a young pup coming out of junior, drafted in the first round by Dallas. And Mike, you said it perfectly, man. The mental stuff and putting the team on your back and accepting losses and apologizing for the way you play only lasts so long. He's got to kind of show a little bit more and maturity here. And skilled, talent, conditioning wise, he's got all that. It's up in between the ears for Jack. And I'm really hoping that one of these two guys really runs with this, because Jack's still got some game left in him. And they got to work as a pretty good tandem this year if they're going to have any success.
Yeah. All right. Just a fun question here. Luke, I know when we first sent you the DM to kind of join us here, I told you that we know Vernon Fiddler pretty well, and you kind of touched that you were in the Dallas organization. Is there any funny Vernon Fiddler stories, any kind of, cool relationship that you have with him? And I think the guy's a hell of a guy. He's very funny, but is there any kind of thing that stands out with him throughout maybe your time passed with him in the Dallas organization?
I actually played again with him in New Jersey as well.
Okay.
He was one of the vets in Jersey. I don't know if I have anything funny off the top of my head, but Fids was the man. Fids was the definition of an older vet that was looking after all his guys, and especially the young guys, the rookies. I remember Pavel Zacha was a young guy in New Jersey, and Fids had us over for dinner the one night. And even in Dallas, when I wasn't even on the team, I was in Texas with with the AHL team, and just knew a couple of the guys on the Stars. And Fitz came down on conditioning, a couple conditioning stints, takes all the boys out for lunch. He was just one of those really cool vets that I looked up to when I was young, and one of those guys who was like, I want to remember this, because when I'm that age and I'm a vet in the league, like, I want to act like that. I remember how that guy made me feel when I was young. He's is sarcastic as heck too, though. He's always good for a couple one-liners. But he was just a guy that I remember being like, damn, when I'm a vet, I want to be like Fitz, because he was intense when he had to be, but could kick his legs back and play poker and tell stories on the plane after the game for hours. So he was really a cool dude for me.
Yeah. Futs, do you have any kind of, from watching him play, obviously you were in the game for such a long time, but was there any time that you guys kind of were trying to get him in any organizations that you were with, in LA, or, anything?
We always heard, I mean, the same thing that Gads just described as a player. But I mean, at the time when we were winning, we had so many of those players. And I mean, that's why you win a championship. Like, I always say the most underrated trade that Dean Lombardi ever made was for Jared Stoll and Matt Green. We traded Lubomir Viznovsky, who was an all-star at the time. I got a great story that I can't tell about that. Lubomir Viznovsky, because I'd have to take Mark Crawford to the shed house with what Lubo thought his real name was, based on what Crawford called him more than his real name. But anyways, those guys came in our room, just like Stoley and Greeny, you just wonder what the heck happened, and like, how could the Edmonton Oilers get rid of these guys? Like, they're the best two teammates that I've ever, and then we started adding, like, like the Justin Williams, and you look around the room, and I've always said this, like Dustin Brown, God, I love Brownie, but he was our captain, and we probably had 10 other guys that were captains, like Mike Richards, Jeff Carter, like Willie Mitchell at the time. Like, it was just ridiculous, like how many true blue leaders we had. And that's kind of player that I had heard that Vernon was that kind of teammate and stuff like that. But I got asked, I want to ask, because I know we had talked a little bit about Biss, and I want to beat up, but Gaz, what's the biggest thing for you? I mean, I know for me, when you're on a live television program, and I always use my analogy with Biss, because Biss always wants me to go on Spittin' Chicklets, right? Like, I got an incredible relationship with him. I coached him. I managed him. I brought him into the Ontario Reign, where he hung up his Twitter account because Dean Lombardi said, you can trade for him, Feuds, but he has to turn off Twitter for 3 months. And that was the only. So he came in, turned his Twitter account off, won a Calder Cup, and then turned out to be the media superstar that he is. But I always said, people would say, like, when I said this, I can't come on yet, because I think the stuff that we'd have to talk about would lead to my early retirement plan. It's just a different show with entertainment, but it's amazing because it's that filter thing, right? Like, I know when I'm on, when I'm asked a question, whether I know what the question is or whether I had rehearsal, there's a filter that goes through my mind that I'm very careful about what comes out. You don't want to offend anybody. You want to be funny. I think that's part of my personality. I think the real effective people, if you just leave your sense of humor and that's not who you are, you've got to be sarcastic without. But I always said to, like, my analogy was that if Paul was caught taking a leak if Biss was caught taking a leak behind a bar, it'd turn into a funny story. If I got caught taking a leak behind a bar, I'd be cuffed and arrested and never do another game in hockey. So those that can live their life and give answers without a filter, and have become just the way they work, it's incredible to watch. So it'll be interesting to see how some of the stuff with Babs plays out, because I know how passionate and prepared Biss is for something like that. But sometimes you gotta, before you shoot the gun, you got to make sure. You got to make sure. I certainly hope all his bases are covered, because it is an interesting story, and I know how entertaining and how much thought and how much passion he has for the job he does.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in this process of starting the podcast and interviewing players, is that I am able to get such captivating interviews because these guys have a level of comfortability with another player and might say some things and tell stories XYZ that maybe the reporters or regular media isn't going to hear. And I am responsible personally for not really breaking that covenant. Like, if something is told to me in secrecy or through a text message or off the record, I kind of enter into a covenant with the player that I'm not really going to go out there and spill the beans of what's happening. I'm not saying Biz is looking for the clicks, but I'm not looking for the clicks for my show or trying to get frontline headlines because this player said something. I've kind of taken the approach of getting a level of comfortability with the guys and getting cool and fun answers, but not trying to overstep the boundary and making them feel uncomfortable when they have to go back to their respective teams.
Yeah, is your podcast, like I know with Joshua is yours taped or is it broadcast live?
Ours is taped. So
that's the energy. You also have the ability though to go back and if there's something that, like as 100%. We said, and clean it up a little bit. And that's the part for me that it's just when we're doing the live TV stuff, that to me was the biggest factor is that you've got something in your ear that you might you're going to get a laugh. It's friggin' hilarious, but there's no chance in hell you're throwing it out there because it's not worth the 1 ounce of laughter for the calls you're going to get after about, whether you piss somebody off or, and I think because, and having been in that seat, been in the management seat where the media on the other side is asking the questions and you're answering and it's your livelihood wins and losses. I have a little bit more respect for the guys that are getting chewed out on a nightly basis for, the job they do, because it's not an easy job. And I certainly know that more than because I've been in that position. So it's unique. That's for sure. I love doing it, but it's live television is it's beauty.
No joke, man.
Well,
Mike, I don't know if you were working with me. This made me think of something when you said this earlier in the interview that, once they say go, like it's go. It might have been you or Sam working with me. It was one of my first dates this year. I was first up on the desk. Carolyn set me up with the Rangers and Tarasenko. And she looked at me and I looked at my camera point and I just went blank. I started talking and I had no clue what my thought was. And I think I looked over and I was like, I'm so sorry, guys. I lost my train of thought.
We went to break, Gaz, and you looked like
I was like, what did I just do?
You looked like an athlete that needed to go. And I felt like I wanted to give you a big hug because you're working so hard at it, but you were taking it so hard.
I know.
You look like you just got and turned over the puck last man back and they buried it in an overhand game. It was such a little blip, but it also tells how important you are about how serious you are about being great. I love Stewie, but I'll be sitting there with Stewie and he'll be talking about a guy going, Futa, this guy's the best Finnish player I've seen and stuff. And I'll go, yeah, other than he's Swedish. And then you'll say something like, Stewie will go, they don't know. You'll go off here and he goes, they don't know. I'm like, well,
Mike, I had a question to tail off the Biz thing. Do you think that's going to scare some general managers from having players appear on Chicklets for the next foreseeable future?
It'll be interesting because it's such a big ticket for the players and they love it so much, but it wouldn't surprise. I don't think they're going to be too many Columbus Blue Jackets on Spit and Chicklets for the next foreseeable future. But I just think it'll be really interesting. One place I'm really interested to see is the Toronto Maple Leafs because is in general, and this has nothing to do with the Babcock thing. It's because there's always been this, it's almost this new year, and you've seen this, Josh, we talked, like Brad Trelawing's such an open, genuine guy that he loves his players being involved in those kind of environments and stuff like that. But you have to be careful. And so you make your players available and stuff, but in that environment, it's such a fun environment where you're expected to tell us fun stories. I look back and he's my guy. Okay, Tyler Toffoli, and correct me if I'm wrong, Josh. He was on there, right? And I didn't see it, but I saw a snippet of it. And inadvertently, Tyler, who respects Daryl Sutter more than anybody in hockey, it kind of came off to me is he was put in a situation where he kind of had to sewer Daryl a little bit or open up on some stuff last year behind the scenes. It wasn't a great light on a coach that I know he loves. So you got to be careful because, as I said, and that's why I've asked people in management, like I want to get back in the National Hockey League, and I said, Bitch wants me on Spit and Chicklets, and I just get it's like a hard red stop sign, not a chance for you. It's not it's much as it's entertaining. It is about having a relaxed, as I said, the best podcasts are the ones where you're relaxed and you're open and you're unfiltered. And there they want you to be unfiltered. And if you're in a position in your life where you can be unfiltered, go at it. But if you want to get there and talk dirt on other people and tell funny stories, like I did this. I did the trade deadline. I think it was with Biss, and I didn't even know he was coming. And we did some stuff together that was magic because we were just talking about our past and our history together and how he kind of got to be the guy opening a door for him to become Biss the Nasty. And that was easy TV. But he wasn't asking me, "Hey, Futes, what do you think? About the Leafs, or what do you think about Babcock, or tell me a story, or give me a dirt on." So can't put yourself in that kind of situation. And some people can, that's fine. But again, that show's so popular. It's a great question, Gads. I can't see the players like it so much, and they love that group so much. And when you've got guys like Sidney Crosby that live and die with these guys, it's going to be tough to imagine players putting a protest up based on something that, from all accounts, he's not backing off of, he feels is true. And it obviously happened. It's just the context of how it happened, right? And what the purpose of it was. So,
yeah. Very well said in a lot of terms towards the end here. And the way, I know we got to get Luke out here. But the one thing I'll just say is, like, what I try to do here with this podcast is try to run it like a convenience store, business, a restaurant. Is you want a great experience the first time you come on so you can come back. And, I think what Spit and Chicklets have done has been good. But I do think that was a question I had with some people yesterday. It's the exact question that you said, Luke, to Mike, was, would there be a league mandate memo sent out? Would GMs just say something to their players? We'll see what happens from this. Like, I thought Elliot's hit on sportsnet.ca last night with Ivanka Osmak was probably the best way to summarize everything that's going on here. And if people haven't watched it, I encourage you to go take a look at it. And there's no more plugged in person in the business than Elliot Friedman and his grasp on things. So, but we'll finish up on that. Luke, do you have anything you want to add before we sign out here?
No, just good to see my buddy Mike, and I have a more integral role, I guess I would say, on Sportsnet this year. So for anyone listening, catch me on Hockey Central and all that. And coming up to our 8th and final episode of the summer for Mitts Off with Luke Gazdic. I can't tell you who it is yet because I don't know that. And it's check out the YouTube, man. This has been such a cool project for me to get going, and hopefully we continue making episodes throughout the season here for everybody.
Oh, I think
you get Babcock on, Dads.
Yeah, right now, yeah.
Exactly. Feuds, do you have anything to add before we sign out here?
Just good luck to Gaz. It's like same thing when you see somebody that's passionate about something and puts in the time. It's great to see how quickly he's grown, and I know he's going to be much more involved at Hockey Central this year. And I think that's a good thing for the hockey audience at Hockey Central. So have a great season, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Everyone be humble, be kind, be safe, enjoy the week, and take care.